What was the hardest times in your career and why were they difficult? How did you overcome them?
Probably that first year on the circuit. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were going to countries. We went to Tel Aviv in Israel, and there was war breaking out when we got to the airport. We had to go through security for 3 hours. They weren't going to let us out of the country. Things like that were very scary. That was a tough circuit. That 16 weeks was really tough because that was my first experience on the circuit. And also when you have down, when you're not playing the best, your form's not great, you're not feeling great, that's when it's hard, and you come home and you try and pick yourself up. But you always pick yourself up and you get back out there. It's your job at the end of the day, and you've got to keep performing, otherwise you may as well not be there.
Do you want your kids to follow in your steps to become a tennis player, and do they want to as well?
If they wanted to be a tennis player, I would support them to no ends, but they're not as competitive as me. They take after my husband, who isn't as competitive, and so they're happy to play tennis at a good level, but don't choose to do it at a competitive level.
Yeah. What was the best place you visited or lived for the pro?
My favourite place is Brisbane. I used to love coming home. Every time I'd fly into Brisbane, it was like, you beauty, I'm home. Travelling, obviously Wimbledon, the tennis tournament, is the biggest tournament in the world. It was a highlight of the year. So I love London, playing in London. I stayed with the family, that was fantastic. So that in tennis eyes, but in just coming home, coming back to Brisbane every time to see my family was the best.
So it was good to be in a place where they spoke your own language.
Yes. I found Paris, the French Open, very hard because I found Parisians not very polite. They were a little bit rude. Outside of Paris was okay, but in Paris, yeah, sometimes if you couldn't speak French, they wouldn't even acknowledge you. So it was very difficult.
Yeah. What was your favourite Grand Slam and why?
My favourite Grand Slam was Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And then the Australian Open followed very closely because it was in Australia, it was at home. Lots of people could go and watch at Australian Open. Maybe that was on a par, but I used to love Wimbledon because it was the biggest tournament in the world. As a player growing up, that's where you dreamed of playing. And
yeah. Did you play in Brisbane ever?
I did play in Brisbane. They used to have a tennis centre at Milton. Yeah, where Emerson's is now, yeah. Emerson Park, yeah, tennis centre. They used to have grass courts there. They used to have hard courts there. So that was our main centre. I've played at Hope Island. They had the tournaments there, and then now it's at Tennyson. So I never actually played a competitive match at Tennyson, the Pat Raft Arena, but yeah, we played a lot of matches at Milton.
Yeah. Who was your biggest tennis idol?
Steffi Graf, and I actually played her in my first Grand Slam, and I named my daughter after Steffi Graf, so that's why she's called Stephanie.
What was the best and worst things about being a tennis player?
The best thing is the opportunities it gave me to meet people, to see the world. The challenge of getting a world ranking and being the highest ranked player you can be. And the worst things about, did you say worst things?
Yeah.
The worst thing was being away from home for such a long period of time, not seeing friends and family for such long periods.
Yeah. What tips would you give anyone that wants to be a tennis player?
Anyone who wants to be a tennis player, you have to work really hard. Be very dedicated because every single person out there is trying just as hard as you, or even harder. So every time you walk on a tennis court, you've got to give 100% effort. It's not always on the day, it's not always about who's playing well, it's about who can get through situations and cope with different situations that win matches. So it's very important to be, there's not just one attribute to tennis, you have to have many attributes to be a champion, and you have to work hard on all of those.
Do you have any personal anecdotes that you could share with me that were funny or just like weird?
No. You hear them all on the tennis court, my coaching, don't you? No, no.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you just had an ordinary life?
Yep, ordinary life compared to, oh, look, I say it's not ordinary really. Being a sporting professional is not an easy lifestyle, but it's given me so many opportunities, set me up for life, and so it's been fantastic, but it's a very hard lifestyle.
The last question is, would you like, what would you like, where would you like to go? Just like, if you were to go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
We just been to Tasmania, that was one. It's Australia. I want to see Australia. So I've done Ayers Rock, done the Great Barrier Reef, we've done Tasmania, so I would like to do Kakadu or something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. All right.